Chapter 1. The Warning in the Garage. They tried to strip me of everything Harold left, forging papers to say I was no longer of sound mind, even planting notes that I was losing track of bills and accusing my own son. My daughter-in-law stood ready to take it all with the help of a powerful law firm. But the truth has claws, and my revenge would not let their lies stand. I am Eleanor Whitfield, and this is how I uncovered the betrayal inside my own family. The elevator lobby smelled faintly of floor polish and old paper as I crossed the marble toward the garage. August in Boston had pressed a film of heat over everything, and even the concrete down here held a breath of it. I checked the time on my phone, slipped it into my purse next to a folder of bank statements Harold and I had kept in a firebox for years, and told myself to breathe like I taught my second graders on test days. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Steady, Eleanor. You are going to a meeting, not a battlefield. My sedan chirped when I clicked the fob. I reached for the door handle and caught movement in the side mirror. A man stepped out from behind a concrete pillar, not close enough to startle me, but close enough to be a choice. He raised both hands at chest level like a crossing guard. Work boots scuffed at the toes. A button-down that used to be white. A canvas messenger bag with worn corners. His eyes were surprisingly clear. I stood with the car door half open, one hip against the frame, ready to slide in if this turned. He said he was Eddie and that he had once worked for the very firm upstairs. Morrison and Associates. He said I should not go up there unprepared. I told him he had 10 seconds to convince me I was not about to shout for help. He nodded as if he had already had this conversation with himself, and reached into the bag, slowly showing me each movement of his hands the way a nurse shows a needle before a flu shot. He pulled out a thick envelope and a slim spiral notebook. He said he used to be a paralegal, that he knew where the files lived, and that what was inside the envelope mattered more than how we were meeting. I did not take the envelope at first. He set it on the hood, stepped back, and told me that he knew Maisie. My body went cold. He said he had watched a set of documents move through the office in April that did not make sense with the file he had seen in November of last year. He said the April version created a trust that did not exist before and gave my son the keys to every door while handing me an allowance like a child. He said the November will left everything to me in plain language. He said the April file arrived with a medical note that claimed I was drifting, that I was mixing up bills, that I sometimes forgot whether I had eaten breakfast. I could hear the hum of the ventilation fans and my own pulse. I asked how he knew my daughter-in-law was involved. He opened the notebook and showed me neat lines of dates and times, initials, check numbers, and the names of 2 junior associates I did not recognize. He said he had seen Maisie in the waiting area 3 times that month for brief drop-offs at odd hours, and that the receptionist had logged her under a work supplier code. He said that was not normal for family paperwork. He said he had raised a question and found himself without an employee badge a week later after a vague conversation about fit. I made myself reach for the envelope. The thick notary stamp on the first page looked like every stamp I had notarized as a teacher for field trips and permission slips. A copy of a will dated November of the year before, bearing Harold Whitfield with signatures that matched the curl on his W the way his hand always did. There was a page from a records archive where the original had been stored with a number string and a clerk name from a firm across town that had handled Harold's first will decades ago. There was an affidavit from a notary who had witnessed the signatures. There were 2 color printouts of emails Eddie said he had forwarded to his personal address before his access was cut headers, and all between an associate and the partner about rushing a trust package. He had redacted an address to protect the receptionist who had printed them for him. I traced the raised edge of the notary seal with my thumb and felt the heat rise behind my eyes. Harold always loved official stamps. He used to joke they were little circles of order in a messy world. Eddie said he had also included a short document explaining how he had obtained each item where the originals were held and who could confirm what. Chain of custody, he called it, something I half remembered from juror orientation years ago. He said if anyone upstairs tried to shove me into a corner with a doctor's note, I should keep my temper and require verification. He said capacity is a legal term, not a feeling, and it cannot be declared by a bullet point on a page that was not even signed by a treating physician. I asked why he was helping me. He looked at his boots for a breath, then at me. He said some things have a weight you do not get to set down just because a supervisor says so. He said he had made a stupid decision once, a small corner cut for a senior partner, and that this time he had decided to move in the other direction. He said if I walked into that conference room without knowing what they had planned, they would try to make me feel small enough to sign anything just to get my air back. He said I did not look like a woman who would sign away her air. I remembered a November morning when Harold and I stood in the old lawyer's office and signed a stack of papers while a notary watched and then chatted with us about grandkids. We went for clam chowder afterward, and he winked at me over his spoon. If I go first, Nell, you keep everything and you keep your head. We had laughed because we were not supposed to talk about dying. We had signed anyway. He had died in May, the afternoon light falling across the end of our bed like a gold ribbon. I had held his hand until it cooled. My phone buzzed with a calendar alert. 15 minutes to the meeting. I slid the envelope into my purse next to the bank statements. Eddie moved a half step closer, careful, and told me not to let them use a tape recorder without my consent. He said if there was a little red light on the table, I should say I prefer to proceed without devices. I thought of my second graders and how many times I had taught them to advocate for themselves, to use their voice to ask for help. It felt odd and right to take that advice at 64. I told him I would keep my voice. He smiled like someone had taken a weight off his shoulders that he had been carrying since April. He reached into the bag again and handed me a single page, a list of names and phone numbers. The clerk at the archive who could confirm the November file existed, the notary, a former associate who had left the firm last winter and was now at a boutique practice in Cambridge. He said if security got involved, I should be polite and ask for a supervisor. He said to remember that my late husband's estate was not a community project to be managed by anyone who happened to find a pen. A car rolled past us, tires whispering on concrete. The driver glanced over, saw two people with papers, and kept going. I held the list and heard the last thing Eddie said as much as I understood the words. He said they will try to make you doubt your own memory. He said the trick is to make you reach for certainty anywhere they offer it. He said to keep my hands in my lap if they push documents at me, to read slowly, to ask for copies, to insist on my right to review. He said to remember that grief is not incompetence and caution is not confusion. I thanked him, and he shook his head, like thanks made him uneasy. He said he would be in the lobby if I needed him, and that if he did not answer a call right away, I should text. He said he had already sent Detective Chen at Boston Police a packet about a potential forgery and elder financial exploitation, and that she had replied that she would review and follow up if needed. Hearing a detective's name in this garage knocked something back into place in my chest. This was not just a family squabble with raised voices over a roast. This was paper that could move money and houses and the power to sign checks. This had rules. I locked the car and we walked to the elevator together, a careful distance that made the whole thing look less like a secret and more like a plan. The elevator took a long breath before the doors opened. Stainless steel fluorescent light, a mirror that showed me a woman in a navy dress with a pearl necklace and sensible heels. A woman who had walked children across crosswalks and sat through faculty meetings and baked pies for church auctions. A woman who had signed a marriage license in 1981 and a will in 2022. I pressed 15 and felt the soft lurch as the car began to rise. At the 10th floor, the doors opened and a couple in business casual stepped in, talking in low voices about a lease renewal. I stared at the floor numbers and kept my hands on the strap of my purse. I could feel the edge of the notary seal through the leather like a coin under a tablecloth. My breathing found its rhythm again. In through the nose, out through the mouth. On 14, my reflection looked steadier. On 15, the bell chimed. I stepped out into a hallway lined with framed photos of smiling partners at charity galas, and the receptionist looked up with a practiced welcome. I told her my name and the time of the appointment. She smiled and asked me to have a seat, and I did knees together, purse in my lap, eyes on the frosted glass door that led to the conference rooms where they kept the pens. Chapter 2: The Deceptive Meeting. A door opened with a soft click, and a young man in a navy suit appeared, asking if I was Ms. Whitfield and if I would follow him. I stood, smoothed my dress, and carried my purse like a shield. As we passed the hallway toward the conference rooms, I saw Barbara in a chair by the window with a magazine she was not reading, and Amanda beside her tapping a heel against the leg of the table. Barbara lifted her chin in a way that said we would speak later. Amanda glanced at me and then away. I kept moving. The conference room was all dark wood and gleaming glass, a long table with chairs that rolled too easily on carpet. At the far end sat Morrison with a leather folder and two associates on his right, one with a legal pad and one with a tablet. On the left sat Daniel and Maisie. My son had his hands folded thumbs, worrying the edge of a wedding band. Maisie had arranged her hair in a low chignon and wore a soft gray dress that said caretaker without saying nurse. She stood partway and called me mom in a tone as light as tissue paper. I took the chair opposite them, set my purse in front of me, and placed my hands on either side of it. Morrison introduced the associates as if I were being seated at a dinner party, then opened his folder. He said we were here to address the administration of the estate of the late Mr. Harold Whitfield. He said there had been a revision to the estate plan in April of this year, and that today he would walk us through its structure. He said if at any point I needed clarification, I should let him know. I said I would. He slid a set of papers toward me, not all the way to my hands, stopping just short so I would have to reach. I did not. He nodded to the associate with the tablet, who turned it so the screen faced me. The first page read, Trust Agreement, April 2023, with language that pooled every asset I could remember, and several I had not thought about in months. The trustee was named as Daniel Whitfield. There was a schedule of distributions, a column of expected cash flow, and a line for spousal maintenance. $45,000 per year paid in monthly installments for my benefit for life. The words did not look like numbers, so much as shackles. Maisie leaned forward with hands clasped. She said everyone wanted to make sure I felt secure and that structure prevented mistakes. She said the past few months had been hard and that Daniel had researched best practices for families in transition. She said a trust was protection. She said she had spoken to a support group facilitator who said that routine is key for older adults. She smiled in a way meant to be gentle. Daniel cleared his throat. He said he had agreed to take on the administrative work because it would be simpler to have one-point person. He did not say the word control. He said trustee because that is what the page called him. He did not look at me. I asked where this trust had been executed. Morrison said here in this office in April. I asked who signed for Harold if he was recovering from a hospitalization then. Morrison said Mr. Whitfield had capacity on the day in question and that the notary had verified identity. He kept his eyes level the way a man picks a point on the horizon during a storm. The associate with the legal pad wrote something that looked like the word capacity and underline marks. I looked at my son. Daniel had always been careful with numbers. He ran a tutoring service in college to pay for books. He balanced a checkbook with a pencil until everything matched. He stared now at a smudge on the table and said nothing. I heard myself say Harold never doubted my ability to manage our life. He would not have built a fence around me. Morrison lifted a page from his folder and said Mr. Whitfield expressed concern about the strain of financial management in grief and wished to remove burdens. He said those were common sentiments. He said he had seen many families choose this route. I asked to see the signature pages. The associate with the tablet scrolled and held the screen toward me. The signature that pretended to be my husband's lay next to a date in April. I did not reach for the device. I asked for hard copies. Morrison nodded, and the associate with the legal pad rose to print them. I folded my hands and waited. I felt the edge of the notary seal in my purse like a steady drumbeat. While we waited, Maisie filled the air with a story about an older neighbor who had been scammed by a fake charity because she was not careful with mail. She said she had been reading about ways families can avoid problems and that a stipend with oversight could stop accidents before they start. She said a friend at the dental office had done something similar for her mother. I said nothing. Daniel shifted and said maybe we could table the examples until we reviewed the pages. Maisie went still for a moment, then nodded. The associate returned with a clipped stack and placed it by my purse. Morrison invited me to review. I slid the top page out and read slowly. Trustee Daniel Whitfield. Powers extensive and specific. Authority to manage and sell. Authority to consolidate accounts. Provisions for my benefit read like a school vending machine menu. The signature page showed Harold's name in ink and a notary block. The notary name was familiar from the firm's receptionist wall, not the old notary we had used the year before. I looked up and asked if this trust superseded the will executed in November. Morrison said yes, and that the trust became the governing document for assets retitled into it. He said pour-over provisions would handle the rest. He said this streamlined probate. He said probate was cumbersome. He said the trust was a responsible choice. I placed the page back on the stack. I said I had brought financial records and would like to compare account numbers with the schedule. Morrison nodded a tight nod to the associate with the tablet who tapped and brought up a schedule. Some accounts matched, Others were listed as pending transfer. I felt the first flare of anger clean and bright when I saw the words pending transfer beside the account that held the mortgage proceeds Harold had insisted we keep liquid for emergencies. I asked when those transfers were initiated. Morrison said the paperwork had been prepared and that any final signatures could be completed today if I wished. The words "if I wished" floated across the table like a paper boat with a rock inside. I glanced along the edge of the table and saw a small device near a coaster with a pinprick red bead of light. I asked whether we were recording. The associate with the legal pad looked startled. Morrison said the device allowed for accurate minutes and that the file would be part of the matter record. I said I did not consent to an audio recording and preferred to proceed without devices. Morrison lifted a hand and the associate tapped a button. The red light vanished. I felt my lungs expand. Maisie spoke softly and said I had seemed forgetful at the pharmacy last month. She said the pharmacist had to repeat instructions. She used the word worried. I said grief is a fog and that repeating instructions is a business practice, not a diagnosis. I said I had taught children to ask for repetition when they needed it, and I had done the same. Daniel rubbed his forehead. He said he did not like where the conversation was going. He said this was supposed to help. I asked to see the medical note that justified any change in capacity. Morrison hesitated, then said there was a physician letter in the file referencing memory concerns. He said it had been provided by family. He did not say which family member. I said I would like a copy of that letter and the credentials of the signer and any test results referenced. The associate wrote quickly. Silence gathered around the edges of the room like rain clouds. Barbara appeared briefly in the doorway and then vanished when she saw the table. Amanda's laugh carried down the hall, too bright for the moment. The air vent murmured. Morrison folded his hands. He said that in his professional opinion the April Trust was valid and reflected a prudent approach for a widow in transition. He said courts in Massachusetts favor instruments that reduce administrative burden. He said today we could execute any remaining transfers and set the monthly distributions to begin next week. He said all that remained were signatures. His tone wrapped the words in velvet and laid them in front of me like a gift. I sat very still and looked at my son. His eyes met mine for a fraction of a second, gray and tired, and slid away. He said he wanted what was best and that he believed structure could help right now. He said he could take care of the details so I could focus on my life. He did not say which part of my life would be left for me to focus on once the details left my hands. I placed my palm on the purse and felt the ridge of the seal again. I told Morrison we would not proceed with any transfers until I had independent counsel review the April document and the medical letter and verify the notary and witness information. I said I would also be comparing the signatures with the November file already on record. Morrison's jaw worked once, then stilled. He said I was of course entitled to consult counsel. He said he would note my request. He said in the meantime the trust existed and would be presumed effective. The fluorescent lights hummed a little louder. Outside the glass, the receptionist answered a phone and smiled at nothing. I watched the tip of Morrison's pen settle on his pad. We were all waiting for something to crack. Chapter 3. The Forged Papers. Morrison lifted his eyes as if a clock had chimed and tapped the folder with one finger. He said there was one additional item relevant to estate administration and asked the associate with the tablet to bring up a letter. A new document filled the screen with the heading from a family medicine clinic in Back Bay. The first paragraph spoke of mild cognitive impairment consistent with early Alzheimer's disease. My name was in the second line, my birth date correct, the rest, a slow drizzle meant to soak a reader who did not know me. Where did this come from, I asked. From family, Morrison said. Provided to support prudent safeguards. Which family, I said. He did not answer that part. The associate slid a printed copy across the table. There were attach points in the margin where staples had been. The signature at the bottom was a name I did not recognize, followed by a credential. No office phone number, only a letterhead address and a generic email. Maisie folded her hands and leaned toward me. Mom, we only want you safe, she said. This is a season of adjustment. Routine is your friend. Did you obtain this letter, I said. She looked briefly at Morrison and then back at me with a small frown of hurt. I gathered information because Daniel was overwhelmed, she said. We just want to avoid errors that could cost you. Daniel's jaw worked. He stared at the table. Let me see any test results referenced in this letter, I said. Dates, providers, raw scores, the name of any physician who actually examined me. Morrison's pen drew a line I could not read. The letter summarizes concerns noted by family, he said. It reflects a pattern consistent with decline. I lifted the page to eye level and read the middle paragraph. It listed that I had repeated questions in a pharmacy line and confused an electric bill with a water bill. It said I had accused my son of taking money, that I had misplaced a checkbook, that I had told a neighbor the wrong day for trash pickup. My chest felt tight in a way I recognized from the Morning Herald's cardiologist had said the word failure. "Those are anecdotes," I said. "They are not medical findings." Daniel spoke for the first time, voice low. "Mom, you did call me about a charge on your card, and then you found the receipt. I thought maybe a little structure would help." "I found the receipt because I looked. Again," I said. "I called you because you are my son, not because my brain has slipped its gears." Morrison flipped to a page, clipped behind the letter, and slid it an inch closer to his side as if it were shy. "We can proceed irrespective of debate about labels," he said. "The trust is a sound instrument." I set the letter on the stack, squared the corners, and steadied my hands on the table. Something flickered at the edge of the coaster near the carafe. A small red bead pulsed back to life in the housing of the recorder I had asked them to switch off. "Is that recording again?" I said. The associate with the legal pad glanced at Morrison, then at the device. "It must have timed back on," he said. "Turn it off," I said. He pressed the button. The light went dark. My breathing found the path back into my ribs. I looked at Maisie. "Did you write these notes?" I said, the handwriting in the margin, the line about accusing my son. Her chin lifted a fraction. Her voice softened. "I kept observations so we would not forget details during the appointment," she said. "It is responsible to document changes." "I recognize your loops on the E and the little tail you put on your Y," I said. "You learned that in calligraphy class, and you have used it to label freezer containers in my kitchen. You do not get to paste it into a medical file and call it diagnosis." Color rose on her neck. Daniel stared now at his hands as if the wedding band could answer for him. Morrison spoke in the tone of a man delivering a weather report that he did not cause. "Our role is to implement a plan that protects the estate and the beneficiary," he said. "The April instrument reflects that purpose. I will need a copy of this letter and the signer's full credentials and contact information," I said. "I will also need a HIPAA release prepared so I can speak to any clinician who has apparently formed an opinion about my mind." The associate wrote HIPAA and underlined it twice. Morrison inclined his head. "That can be prepared," he said. "Prepare it now," I said. He paused, then gestured to the associate with the tablet, who began to type. Paper fed out of a small printer on the credenza like a quiet surrender. Maisie tried again, softer. "Mom, please do not make this into a fight. You have been misplacing things. You have repeated stories. You left the kettle on." I felt the first flash of humiliation and watched it pass like a cloud that refuses the sun. "I have repeated stories because I buried my husband in May," I said. "I left the kettle because I sat down and looked at his chair and for 1 minute forgot water boils. That is grief. It is not a legal condition." Daniel's voice cracked. "I cannot keep doing this," he said. "We came here to make it smoother. We came here because someone guided you here," I said, and let my eyes fall to the margin note again. The ink had bled slightly into the fiber of the page. The loops were exact. Morrison cleared his throat. "Regardless of disagreement about the letter, the trust remains operative," he said. "Moving assets now avoids probate. Distributions can begin Monday." "Nothing moves," I said. "Nothing begins. Not until independent counsel compares every signature with the November record and verifies every name attached to that letter. Not until the notary block is confirmed by someone who is not on your receptionist wall." The air in the room felt heavy. The ceiling vent sighed. Barbara's perfume drifted for a second at the doorway and then vanished again. Morrison leaned back and made a small tent with his fingers. "We can schedule a follow-up," he said. "In the meantime, monthly maintenance can be set aside in escrow so you are not inconvenienced." "I pay my own light bill," I said. "Keep your escrow." Maisie's voice pinched. "You are being stubborn," she said. "You do not understand how many scams target women your age. I am trying to keep you from being embarrassed." I turned toward my son and let the quiet do some work. "Daniel," I said, "did you read this trust every page? Did you understand what authority it gives you over my accounts and my house?" He nodded without looking up. "I read it," he said. "I thought it would help. That is all. Help whom I said." He did not answer. The associate with his tablet slid a HIPAA release onto the table with a pen. I did not touch it. "Print 2 copies," I said. "I will sign after I speak with my attorney." Morrison's mouth thinned. May I note for the record that you are declining to sign helpful documents that would allow us to clarify matters, he said. You may note that I am using my rights, I said. The red light flickered again, a sly spark. I reached across the table and lifted the device, set it in the middle where everyone could see, and turned it so the face pointed at Morrison. Do not turn this on again, I said. If you need minutes, you take notes like the rest of the city. Silence sat with us for a long moment. The associate with the legal pad scribbled, then stopped, then stared at the scribble as if it had betrayed him. Morrison lowered his voice. I understand this is difficult, he said, but structure can prevent unfortunate events. We have all seen widows taken advantage of. I have seen widows patronized, I said. I have seen daughters-in-law collect anecdotes like pebbles and call it a map. Maisie pushed her chair back an inch. The gentleness had drained from her face. You forget things, she said. You called me by your sister's name twice last month. You left your purse in the church pew. I carried meals to 3 families in 2 weeks, I said. Names blur when you are tired. A purse in a pew is not a diagnosis. Daniel let out a breath that sounded like defeat. Maybe we should pause, he said. Mom can get her own lawyer. We can meet again. Morrison did not like that. It showed in the way he arranged his pen parallel to the folder and smoothed the top page until it lay flat as a lake. Before we adjourn, he said, I will place on the record that the April Trust was executed before a notary with witnesses and that in my professional judgment it is valid. If you wish to contest capacity or authenticity, you may do so. The instrument stands unless set aside. I heard you, I said. You will hear from my counsel. He nodded once. The associate with the tablet clicked to a fresh screen. The device in the center of the table sat like a small red eye that had finally blinked shut. I folded the letter with the margins into my stack, slid the papers into my purse behind the seal that felt like a coin of truth, and let my hands rest on leather that had been a Christmas gift from Harold before the world tilted. Outside the glass, a phone rang at the reception desk and stopped. Inside the room, the quiet tightened one more notch and waited for the next knock on the door. Chapter 4: The Whistleblower. The knock came soft and careful, then the door opened before anyone answered. Eddie stepped in with the same canvas bag and a steadier look than a man should have in a room like this. Maisie's face drained, then refilled with color too fast. Daniel sat up as if a string had been pulled between his shoulder blades. Morrison did not stand. He folded his hands and watched Eddie walk to the end of the table. Mr. Kowalski Morrison said, "This is a private meeting." Eddie set the bag on the table and unzipped it with deliberate fingers. "I am here at Ms. Whitfield's request," he said, "and I have documents relevant to the estate you are handling." He eased out a thick envelope secured with a binder clip and a spiral notebook whose cover had been rubbed thin at the corners. He placed both in the center of the table and slid them toward me. The envelope made a weighty sound against the wood. I did not touch it yet. Morrison's eyes flicked to the associates. One reached for the recorder on reflex, then froze when he saw it already sitting in the middle like a dark stone. "What exactly do you think you are doing?" Morrison said. "Correcting a record," Eddie said. Maisie found her voice a thread pulled too tight. "You cannot just barge in here," she said. "This is harassment." Eddie looked at her for 1 second, then away as if he had decided she did not get to set the terms anymore. "Ms. Whitfield asked me to bring a notarized copy of the November will and a chain of custody summary," he said, "along with notes I kept in April about irregular payments and late-night drop-offs tied to this file number." Daniel blinked. "What payments?" he said. Eddie opened the notebook to a page with neat columns and slid it around so it faced Morrison. He tapped dates in April and early May, amounts in round figures, initials that matched the junior associate with the legal pad and another I had not heard yet, a notation that read, "Courier after hours with a timestamp near midnight." Another that read, "Cashier's check delivered by M." A third that read, "Cash and envelope reception logged as vendor." Morrison's mouth thinned. "Paralegals are not auditors," he said. "You are speculating." "I am documenting," Eddie said. "And I preserved 2 emails about rushing a trust package that did not reconcile with the estate plan executed in November. Those headers are in the envelope redacted to protect a receptionist who printed them for me. The originals are in the archive of the firm that handled the prior will. The clerk is reachable. Her name and number are on my summary." I lifted the binder clip and slid out the first pages. The notary stamp on the copy of the November will caught the light. Harold's signature curled the way his hand always curled his W. A clerk certification confirmed the original on file at the drafting firm. A brief affidavit from the notary who had sat in that office with us. I felt heat behind my eyes and kept breathing until it settled. Morrison spoke to me, not to Eddie, with a careful voice that sounded like polished ice. Even if a prior will exists, the April Trust supersedes it, he said. Your husband had the right to revise his plan. Eddie stayed with him. He had the right to revise a plan, he said, but not through forgery or undue influence, and not with a physician letter that looks like a family scrapbook page. You know what capacity means. You know what a treating provider's signature looks like. A flush crept up Morrison's neck. He reached for the folder, then thought better of it. You are trespassing, he said, and you are making serious allegations without foundation. Eddie kept his tone level. I reported potential forgery and elder financial exploitation to Detective Sarah Chen at Boston Police this morning, he said. I also sent a packet to the Board of Bar Overseers regarding April activity in this office. I am here to make sure Ms. Whitfield has what she needs to protect her rights while those agencies do their jobs. Maisie's chair scraped back an inch. This is insane, she said. Mom is vulnerable and we are trying to help. Daniel, tell them. Daniel did not look at her. What did you deliver? He said to her, quiet and direct. In April, after hours. Her face flickered and set. I dropped off forms, she said. You were working late and asked me to help. I did not ask you to bring cash, he said. Her mouth opened, then closed. I did not bring cash, she said. I do not even know what he is talking about. Eddie tapped the line that read cash and envelope reception logged as vendor. I pulled the lobby log for that evening, he said. Your name is there with a vendor code. The receptionist was told to use it. I have her statement. Morrison cut in frost returning to his tongue. A receptionist log proves nothing, he said. You have no idea what was in any envelope. You are slandering my office in front of clients. Your office can explain it to the board, Eddie said. And to the detective. I slid the November copy closer and placed the April Trust next to it. Side by side, the pages looked like a before and after with a bad haircut. I looked at Daniel. Did you know about any of this? I said. The late-night deliveries, the vendor code. He shook his head once. I knew about the trust, he said. I did not know about envelopes. Maisie's hands clenched in her lap. Everyone is twisting this, she said. Harold was slipping. He wanted what was best. He told me he worried about Mom. I felt something inside me rise up at the use of slipping. Do not speak for my husband, I said. He spoke for himself in November in full sentences on paper with a notary present. He ate chowder with me and told me to keep my head. He did not draft a cage in April. Morrison aimed his voice at me again. We can resolve this with decorum, he said. There is no need for accusations. If you have concerns, file them in the proper forum. Eddie nodded. She will, he said, and she will retain independent counsel. In the meantime, nothing moves. No retitling, no consolidation, no monthly maintenance checks that look like a leash. If anything moves, I will treat it as spoliation and add it to the packet. The associate with the tablet bristled. You do not get to threaten us, he said. Eddie did not look at him. I am telling you what will happen, he said. Daniel rubbed his temple as if a headache had planted itself behind his eye. Maisie, he said softly, did you write on that letter? She stared at the table. I made notes so we would remember details, she said. Everyone forgets. I pushed the margin notes into the light. You wrote that I accused my son of stealing, I said. I called him to ask about a charge, and then I found the receipt. That is not theft, and it is not a symptom. Her eyes flashed. You left the kettle on, she said. You mixed up the trash day. I grieved, I said. That is what I did. Morrison glanced toward the glass, as if measuring how far a raised voice would carry into the hall. Let us lower the temperature, he said. We can circulate copies and reconvene in a week. Ms. Whitfield, you can consult counsel. Mr. Whitfield, you can continue as trustee while we await any motion. Eddie shook his head. No transfers, he said. Not one. Not until the court speaks. Morrison leaned forward by a fraction. You are not her lawyer, he said. I am a witness with documents, Eddie said. And I am the reason you will keep your hands off her accounts today. The room felt smaller by an inch. The vent hummed. Barbara's perfume passed the doorway again, followed by Amanda's quick whisper. Somewhere down the hall, the receptionist began to murmur into a phone the tone people use when they need a supervisor. I finally reached for the envelope and took out the one page that mattered most to me. November, the curl of the W, the notary seal that felt like a coin. I placed it on top of the April stack and smoothed the corner. "This is the governing intent," I said. "My husband left everything to me. You can say trust 3 times like a spell, and it will not change that if a court finds forgery or undue influence. I will take this to probate with counsel and with the detective's file. Until then, nothing moves." Morrison held my gaze for a long count of 3. "You are making a mistake," he said. "I will live with my own mistakes," I said. "I will not live with yours." Maisie tried one more time to reach across the table with a softer tone. "Mom," she said, "please. You do not see how vulnerable you are." I looked at her and felt a steadiness slide into place. "I see exactly where I am," I said. "At my table." Eddie closed the notebook and slid it back into the bag, then left the will copy on the wood like a flag. For the record, he said the November instrument is valid on its face. The April package is tainted by irregular handling and a suspect letter. Any attempt to move assets today would be reckless. If you are wise, you will wait for counsel. Morrison sat back as if he had reached the end of a script. "You have delivered your speech," he said. "You can go now." Eddie looked to me. I nodded once. "I will be in the lobby," he said. "Text if they try anything." He turned and walked out. The door closed with that same soft click that had started all this. I placed my hand over the November copy and felt Harold as plain as if he had spoken. The receptionist's voice outside shifted to a different cadence, the one people use when they are giving directions. Footsteps in the hall moved toward us quick and unhurried at once, and every person at the table looked at the door as if it had something to say. Chapter 5. The Truth Exposed. The door opened and a uniformed security officer stepped in with a small radio clipped to his shoulder. 2 Boston police officers followed, and behind them a woman with steel gray hair pulled back neatly, a slim notebook in one hand, and a calm that felt practiced. She introduced herself as Detective Sarah Chen and asked if this was the Whitfield estate meeting. Morrison stood halfway and gestured as if he were hosting a luncheon. "Detective, there is no issue here," he said. "A misunderstanding in a private legal conference." She looked past him to the table. The recorder sat in the center like a button someone was afraid to press. The April trust stack lay next to the November copy with its notary seal. My purse sat under my palm like a dock line. Chen nodded once to the officers. "We had a call from building security about a disturbance," she said. "We also received a packet this morning referencing possible forgery and elder financial exploitation." "Who is Eleanor Whitfield?" I said. She came to my side of the table and stood where her notebook could see everything. "Do you want to tell me what is going on?" she said. I told her about the April trust presented as a revision. I told her about the letter that called my grief forgetfulness and my caution confusion. I told her about the margin notes that looked like my daughter-in-law's lists for casseroles. I kept my voice even until it broke, then even again. She wrote quickly, but did not once look impatient. Morrison tried to smooth the room. "The instrument is valid," he said. "We are handling an estate prudently. There is nothing criminal here." Chen did not look at him. "Is Eddie Kowalski in the lobby?" she said. Morrison's mouth flattened. One of the officers stepped out and returned a minute later with Eddie at his shoulder. Eddie's face showed relief and a little dread, like he had expected either outcome. He nodded to me and then to Chen. "I sent your office a summary this morning," he said. "I brought hard copies and a chain of custody." He took the envelope back out of his bag and handed it to Chen. She flipped through the pages with the quick care of someone used to sorting plastic from glass while it is still in the air. She paused at the clerk certification and the notary affidavit, then lifted the will copy and compared the signature with the April trust, while her pen made small notes in a tidy hand. "Do you also have what you referenced about images?" she said. "Yes," Eddie said. "Printouts and the digital originals on a drive. The images were in an iCloud backup tied to this phone number. I have the header information and the created dates." He placed a manila folder on the table and a small drive in an evidence bag. Inside the folder were color prints of me at the Stop and Shop pharmacy window, and me in the line at the credit union with a deposit slip in my hand. Under one, a caption said, "Checks twice in 1 week, losing track again." Under another, Pills Confused had to explain twice. The font and tone looked like the cheery notes Maisie liked to put on family photos, except these scraped the skin. Chen glanced up. "Who took these?" she said. Maisie spoke too fast. I do not know what those are, she said. Eddie tapped the header strip. The images originated from an iPhone signed in to this account, he said. The backup hit iCloud on April 15th at 2 a.m. The location metadata places the credit union image at the branch on Center Street in West Roxbury on April 10th at 11:04 a.m. The pharmacy image at Stop and Shop on Washington Street on April 7th at 3:18 p.m. The captions were added in the Photos app and exported that night. Daniel looked at me as if he had been told there was a second son. His voice came out thin. Maisie, did you take those? He said. She stared at the pictures and then at the floor. Her voice shrank. I took a couple because I was worried, she said. I wanted to show the doctor patterns. Morrison slid into the gap. Family providing observations is not unusual, he said. It can help clinicians form a picture. Chen turned to him for the first time. Who wrote the letter about cognitive decline? She said. I will need the full name, license, and contact for the signer and any clinical records that support it. Morrison's professionalism sat on him like an ironed shirt. We have a letter from a family medicine provider, he said. We can furnish a copy. You will do so now, Chen said, and you will not destroy or alter anything related to this estate plan. That goes for emails and draft documents. He drew in a small breath. We will cooperate, he said. Barbara appeared in the doorway, a string of pearls on her collarbone, and a pasted smile that trembled at the edges. She spoke as if auditioning for reason. Detective, we are simply trying to help my sister-in-law, she said. She is under strain, and Daniel is very good with numbers. Amanda hovered behind her, arms wrapped around herself, eyes darting between faces. Chen did not raise her voice. She did not have to. Ma'am, if you are a family member and you have information, you can share it, she said. If what you have is an opinion, keep it until we ask. Barbara's mouth closed. Amanda bit her lip. Eddie handed Chen another page. That is a timeline of April activity here, he said. Vendor code entries for after-hours drop-offs. Staff who can confirm if they are willing. Chen skimmed it and then looked back at me. Do you feel pressured to sign anything, she said. I was invited to proceed with transfers, I said. I declined. She nodded and looked at Daniel. Mr. Whitfield, you are named as trustee in this April document, she said. Did you request the letter or instruct your wife to gather anything? Daniel shook his head. I asked for information, he said. I did not ask for a letter that says my mother is incompetent. I did not ask for late-night money to change hands. Maisie flinched. I never paid anyone, she said. I picked up envelopes. I did not know what was in them. Eddie's jaw tightened. You signed the lobby log, he said, and the receptionist was told to code you as a vendor. Someone inside chose that code for you. Chen raised a hand and the room stilled. I am not going to litigate this in a conference room, she said. Here is what is happening. We are opening a case file. We will collect documents and devices. We will speak to the physician who signed that letter and verify whether there was any clinical basis. We will speak to the clerk who certified the November will and to the notary who witnessed it. We will ask a digital examiner to verify the EXIF data on these images and confirm account ownership. Morrison pressed his lips together. There is no need to be theatrical, he said. Chen's gaze did not waver. There is a need to prevent harm, she said. You will preserve all records. If any assets have moved in reliance on the April document since April, you will identify them. If any transfers are pending, you will halt them until a court directs otherwise. He glanced at the associates. The one with the tablet looked like a person who wished their chair had no wheels. Barbara tried one more time to make herself useful. Detective, our family has served on boards and given to hospitals, she said. We are not that kind of people. Chen's voice stayed level. People are a lot of kinds, she said. We look at facts. Amanda's hand shot to her mouth and then dropped. I believed Maisie, she said, small and honest. She told me Aunt Eleanor was slipping. I am sorry. I wanted to touch her hand and could not make my body move yet. The November notary seal felt warm again through my purse. Harold used to call me brave for little acts, a call to a plumber, a drive through a storm. I held that like a stone. Chen turned a page in her notebook. Ms. Whitfield, we will need a brief statement from you now and a longer one later, she said. Mr. Kowalski, we will log your documents into evidence. Mr. Morrison produced the letter and your correspondence related to the April changes. We will also need the recording device you have used in this room today. Morrison glanced at the small black disc like it had betrayed him. That device is for internal minutes, he said. It is evidence in a potential fraud, she said. The associate with the legal pad reached for it, unplugged a thin wire, and placed it on the table with reluctant fingers. Chen nodded to the officer, who slipped it into a bag and sealed it. The sound of the seal adhesive laying down was louder than it should have been. Maisie's voice came again, thin and sharp. "You are blowing up a family," she said. "For paperwork," I met her eyes. "You began with paperwork," I said. Chen closed her notebook. "Based on what I have seen," she said, "we are looking at signs consistent with forgery and elder financial abuse. We will open an investigation immediately." The words did not feel like a verdict. They felt like a door. The security officer stepped back into the hall to speak into his radio. The officers began the quiet work of collecting what had to be collected. Eddie exhaled, and in that breath I heard months of a man deciding which weight he could carry and which he could not. Daniel sat with his hands open on the table as if he had just set down something heavy and could not yet feel the relief. I reached into my purse for a pen and steadied it between my fingers, and for the first time that day the room looked like a place where the truth might have a chair. Chapter 6. The Debt Revealed. Detective Chen asked the officers to step into the hall with the recorder and the folder, then pulled a chair from the wall and sat where she could see all of us. Her pen rested in the notch of her notebook. She asked if there was anything urgent that had not yet been said. The room held its breath. Then Maisie's shoulders began to shake. The sound that came out of her was not pretty. It was the sound of a person who had run out of places to set a lie. "I cannot keep it straight," she said. "I cannot keep the bills from stacking. I thought if we fixed this, everything would stop sliding." Daniel turned to her with his hands half raised. "Fixed what?" he said. "What is sliding?" She pressed her fingers to her eyes and spoke into her palms. "The debt," she said. "It is more than we told you. It was Mrs. Whitfield. It is more than I told you, Daniel." He went very still. "How much?" he said. She looked at the tabletop as if the number might appear there. "It is over 300,000, she said. 2 mortgages and cards. Some of it was from the renovation we started when interest rates were low. Some of it is the business loan we rolled into the second mortgage. Some of it is the cards we used to float the payments when the dental office cut my hours." Daniel's face emptied like someone had pulled a plug. "You told me it was under 150, he said. "You swore to me you had a handle on it. We made a plan based on that number." She shook her head, crying harder now. "I thought bonuses would cover it," she said. "I thought Daniel's portfolio would bounce back this summer. I thought if the trust took the pressure off, we could keep the house and nobody would have to know." I felt a heat rise in me that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with something older. I remembered the first year Harold and I were married, and how we sat on a linoleum floor to open mail and make a stack for the electric, and a stack for the rent, and a stack for groceries, and how we never once thought to take someone else's stack and call it a solution. "You wanted to turn what Harold built into a rescue fund for your choices," I said. "You wanted to wrap it in nice words and call it protection. It is theft in a church dress." Maisie flinched like the words had fingers. "It was not theft," she said. "It was survival." "The bank was calling. The second mortgage payment is late. The cards keep rolling. We are out of balance transfer offers. We were going to lose everything." I could not breathe. Daniel put a fist to his mouth and dropped it. "You were going to make me the trustee so I could sell my mother's safety net to cover a hole you dug without telling me how deep it was," he said. "You asked me to stand between her and her own accounts and call it love." She reached for his sleeve. "I asked you to fix it," she said. "You fix things. You fix budgets. You fix clients. I thought you could fix us." He pulled his arm away with a small motion that looked like it cost him. "I cannot fix a lie by making a bigger one," he said. Detective Chen's pen moved quietly. "Mrs. Whitfield," she said to me, "I want to make sure you are not agreeing to any transfers today under pressure." "I am not moving a dime," I said. "Not today. Not while a paper I never saw is sitting on this table pretending to know my husband." Chen nodded and turned to Maisie. "Do you have a list of creditors?" she said. "Mortgage statements and card statements. We will need those for context." Maisie rubbed at her face. "Yes," she said, "in the kitchen drawer. There is a folder. The second mortgage is at a regional bank in Quincy. The first is with a national lender. The cards are 2 major banks and 1 store card that we used for appliances." Daniel's voice was flat. "The renovation," he said. "We did the kitchen. We did the deck. We did not need to do both in the same year." Maisie stared at him like she did not know the man across from her. You said it would raise the value, she said. You said leverage made sense if we stayed 5 years. I said leverage makes sense when the numbers are honest, he said. I said that when I thought we were carrying half of what we are carrying. The air had a taste, now a metallic, not from blood, but from something that wanted to be truth and had finally found air. Barbara took a half step into the doorway and thought better of it. Amanda stood behind her with her arms folded tight. I kept my pen in my fingers and heard Harold as if he were clearing his throat at a meeting so people would remember the point. You used me, I said to Maisie. You built a story about my memory to grease a door, and then you pushed Daniel through it first, so he would be the one holding the handle when it closed. She shook her head and shook it again. I did not mean to hurt you, she said. I was scared. People do a lot of harm when they are scared, I said. They also have choices. Daniel lowered his head until his chin nearly touched his chest. His voice came out small. I did not know the number, he said. I did not know about the second mortgage terms. I did not know she added cards after we closed. I should have known. I should have checked. I am sorry, Mom. I wanted to touch his shoulder and could not trust my hand to be steady. The pain that sat behind my ribs did not want a scene. It wanted a chair and a quiet room and Harold to say my name. I kept breathing. Detective Chen's tone stayed even. I'm going to recommend you each make formal statements, she said. I will also recommend that you retain counsel. For now, nothing moves. We will speak with the district attorney's office regarding possible charges related to the April documents. The debt itself is not a crime. What you do around it can be. Morrison found his voice again thin and clipped. We will cooperate as required, he said. Eddie glanced at me. I met his eyes and gave the kind of nod people give when the ground has shifted and you are still on your feet. Daniel looked at Maisie without anger now, only a kind of tired that has edges. How long have you known it was over 300, he said. She swallowed. Since March, she said, when the second mortgage reset, when the card rates jumped, when my hours were cut. And you told me under 150 in April, he said. I thought if we created a trust, the pressure would ease, she said. I thought we could buy time. He sat back and looked at the ceiling like there might be a map up there. You did not buy time, he said. You tried to pawn my mother. Morrison shifted in his chair as if the cushion had stones in it. Perhaps we should adjourn, he said. We are not in a position to resolve personal finances here. Chen stood, closed her notebook, and spoke in that calm that made rooms feel safe. We are done for today, she said. Officers will take custody of the recording device and the copies provided. Mr. Kowalski, leave your contact information. Ms. Whitfield, someone from my unit will call you to schedule a follow-up and to accompany you if you need to retrieve medical file copies. Mr. Whitfield, do not act as trustee on this matter until you have counsel. Mrs. Whitfield, do not sign anything today. Ms. Whitfield, preserve all financial records. Barbara finally found a sentence, and it came out small. We only wanted stability, she said. Amanda whispered without looking up. We believed what we were told. The officers gathered the evidence bag and the folder, then stepped into the hall. The security officer thanked the detective and moved aside. The room felt larger by a breath. I slid the November copy back into my purse and closed the clasp until it clicked. The sound was sharp and satisfying. Maisie reached toward me with both hands. Please, she said. We can figure this out as a family. Do not take this to court. We can sell the car. We can rent the spare room. We can make a plan. I looked at her hands and then at her face. I am sorry you are in a hole, I said. You will climb out of it with the tools you have. You will not use my husband's name as a ladder. Daniel's head dropped again, shoulders folding inward. I will make this right, he said to the air. I do not know how yet. I will make it right. I put the pen back in my purse next to the notary seal and the bank statements and felt the weight of them like a promise. My voice surprised me by how steady it sounded. I will protect what Harold left, I said. I will protect my rights and my name. If you bring me another paper today, I will hand it to my lawyer. If you try to move an account, I will ask a judge to freeze it. That is the path now. No one argued. For a moment, all that moved was a ribbon of cold air from the vent, the kind that rides your skin when a storm is close, but not here yet. Detective Chen nodded once to me and then to Eddie, and I realized that for the first time since I had parked my car that morning, I was not holding myself together by sheer habit. I was simply standing, and that was enough for today. Chapter 7. The Consequences. 2 mornings later, I sat in a small office above a bakery in Brookline, while a probate attorney named Laura Patel read through my stack with the patience of someone who handles storms for a living. She asked clear questions, marked a few pages with neon flags, and drafted a plan so clean it felt like cold water. She said we would file an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order and a request for a preliminary injunction to stop any asset movement until the court could review the November will and the April package. She said she would handle the filing today. "Do you understand what this gives you?" she said. "It gives me time," I said, "and a place to stand." She smiled without showing teeth and slid a form toward me. "I will need your signature to appear on your behalf," she said. "We will attach the clerk certification and the notary affidavit. We will reference the police report number Detective Chen gave you." I signed, and the pen felt heavier than it looked. Outside the window, a delivery truck backed into the alley, and the sound of the bell signal made me think of school recess and children returning to class in pairs. By late afternoon, Laura called to say the motion had been stamped received, and a judge had scheduled a brief hearing by video the next morning. She told me to be ready by 9. I set out a navy cardigan and made a list of accounts on a yellow pad, writing slowly so my hands would remember the shape of each number. That night, I slept for 3 hours at a time and woke to the sound of Harold saying my name in the way he used to when he wanted me to look up from a book and see the light on the window. At 8:59, I clicked a link and watched boxes appear. Laura was at her desk, hair tucked behind one ear, calm as a metronome. A clerk called the case, and the judge appeared, glasses low on his nose, voice steady. Morrison joined with a backdrop of bookshelves and a polite face that looked 2 degrees too smooth. Daniel sat off camera at an angle, a shadow of a living room behind him. I could not see Maisie. Laura spoke first. She summarized the November will, the April, trust the letter that used family notes as diagnosis, the police involvement, and the need to hold everything still. Morrison objected with careful words about prudent planning and spousal maintenance, and how no one intended harm. The judge asked 3 short questions. He asked whether any assets had already moved since April. Morrison admitted some paperwork had been prepared but said nothing had been finalized. The judge asked about the November will's clerk certification. Laura held it up to her camera and read the file number and the name of the clerk. The judge asked about the letter. Laura said the signer would need to be contacted and that Detective Chen had requested records. The ruling was not dramatic. The judge leaned back and spoke like a teacher calling the next lesson. Given the potential for harm, he said, "I am granting a temporary restraining order. No transfers, no retitling, no distributions, no consolidation, and no payments from estate accounts until further order. Counsel will confer and return in 2 weeks for a status conference. Ms. Whitfield will provide a list of accounts for the court file under seal. Any party with documents relevant to authenticity or capacity will produce them within 7 days." Laura thanked him. Morrison said they would comply. The clerk ended the session, and the screen fell back to my own face, small and older than I felt inside. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding, and looked at the yellow pad on my table. I wrote the word "still" in the margin and underlined it. By noon, Detective Chen called. Her voice carried a briskness that sounded like progress. "We executed a warrant for communications related to the April changes," she said. "We also interviewed the notary who witnessed the November will. The district attorney approved a warrant for Ms. Whitfield's arrest on probable cause for filing or presenting forged documents. Officers are on their way to effect the arrest. Mr. Whitfield has been served with a summons for interview as a potential witness. He is not being taken into custody at this time." I thanked her and then stood in my kitchen with both hands on the counter, looking at the vase of hydrangeas that Amanda had brought 2 weeks after the funeral. The petals had gone papery, but still held a soft blue like old china. I thought of Daniel as a boy holding a jar for lightning bugs, and the way he had whispered so they would not be afraid. I wanted to hold that jar for him again, and knew I could not do it for him now. News moves in small circles before it moves in big ones. Barbara called within an hour. Her voice was tight. "They are saying the police are at your son's condo," she said. "Is that true?" "They are there for Maisie," I said. "Daniel has been summoned to speak. He was not arrested." She exhaled and then said she would bring a casserole, and then caught herself and said perhaps later would be better. I told her later would be better. Laura sent a courier late that afternoon with a certified copy of the November will for my files and a thin packet with the court's order. I sat at the dining table, laid the copy on the wood, and traced the raised seal with the pad of my finger. The curve of Harold's W leaned into the line the way his shoulders used to lean into mine at church when the hymn ended and we shared a hymnal. My eyes blurred. I let them. A tear fell and marked the edge of the plastic sleeve, and I did not wipe it. I wanted the mark. The next day, a letter arrived from the Board of Bar Overseers confirming receipt of Eddie's complaint and my supplemental materials. It said an investigator would review whether conduct in April met professional standards. I read it twice. It was not a promise. It was a door with a light behind it. Daniel came by in the evening. He had the tired look of someone who had been awake under fluorescent bulbs. He stood on the porch for a second, like a boy who had misjudged a baseball and was waiting for it to fall. "Can I come in?" he said. Of course, I said. He sat at the table and reached for the will copy without touching it. "They served me in the lobby of our building," he said. The officer was polite. He told me to bring a list of any communications I had with Morrison in March and April. He told me to be honest. "That is good advice," I said. He looked at his hands. "They arrested Maisie," he said. She cried, and then she got very quiet. I do not know what happens next. "The court will say," I said. "The police will say. Your choices will say." He nodded, eyes red but dry. "I am sorry," he said. "I should have seen the number. I should have checked. I let her use my fear of losing control to sell me a story. I made it easy." "You were loved and scared," I said. "That is a bad combination for math." He let out a sound that was almost a laugh and then was not. "Do you hate me?" he said. "I do not," I said. "I am angry at what you did not ask and what you assumed. I am not done being angry. I will not let you manage my accounts. But I do not hate you." He nodded again and then looked at the photograph on the mantel. Harold stood on a ladder in a red sweater with a string of lights in his hand, smiling at the camera like it had told him a joke. Daniel followed my gaze. "He would have told me to sit down and get the numbers," he said. "He would have put the coffee on and gotten 3 pencils and 2 erasers," I said. We sat without talking while the light outside went from honey to pewter. He finally stood. "I will call Laura and get my own counsel," he said. "I will go to the interview and tell the truth." "Good," I said. After he left the house, held a quiet that did not lean on me. I washed the 2 mugs and set them to dry, and then wiped the table with a damp cloth the way Harold used to after Sunday pancakes. The cloth made a clean track through crumbs I had not seen. Later that week, Laura called to say the court had issued a written order confirming the freeze and setting deadlines. She also said the judge had directed that any party who attempted to move assets in violation of the order would be sanctioned. She sounded pleased in the way professionals allow themselves to sound when a small part of the world behaves as it should. That night I sat with the will copy again. I placed my fingers on the signature and whispered Harold like a prayer. Relief did not flood me. It arrived like a slow tide over stones, bringing the smell of salt and the soft slap of water on pilings. Justice had not arrived. Something like it had put a chair in the room and sat down. I breathed and let the tide do what it does. Chapter 8, Justice Served. When the leaves had gone from gold to bare branches and the first snow settled into the cracks of the sidewalks, the probate court issued its ruling. The November will was confirmed as valid and effective, and every attempt to substitute the April trust was set aside. The order was plain signed in thick ink by a judge who had looked me in the eye on the video screen and said the words into the record. I held the copy in my hands at my dining table, the notary seal shining faintly in the light from the lamp, and I felt Harold as if he had just stepped into the room with a mug of coffee. The weeks that followed carried more news. Maisie appeared in court with her attorney and took a plea: 5 years of probation, a fine repayment of legal fees, and a bar from accessing any estate records again. She left the courthouse flanked by deputies, her face pale, her eyes darting toward cameras she could not control. I did not attend in person. I read the transcript the next day and let the quiet of my house be the witness I needed. Morrison was not as lucky. The Board of Bar Overseers stripped his license. The announcement came in a short press release and spread through the local legal community like a spark through dry leaves. He had served on boards, spoken at dinners, raised glasses at galas. None of that saved him. His photo disappeared from the firm website within a day. The firm's brass plaque in downtown Boston remained, but the shine had dulled. Daniel came back to my porch one Sunday afternoon when the sky was low and the air smelled of wood smoke. He carried nothing in his hands and asked if he could sit. We sat at the kitchen table with mugs of tea. He looked older than his 38 years, lines pressed into his forehead that had not been there last spring. I want to say it plain, he said. I was manipulated, I was scared, but I also let myself be used. I made it easier for her to convince me. I should have protected you, and instead I nearly helped take everything away. I am sorry, I kept my eyes on him. His face was Harold's face and some light softer around the jaw, but the same eyes. I let him speak until the words sat between us. I forgive you, I said. But you will not manage what your father left. That part is mine to keep in my own hands. You can stand with me, but you cannot hold the pen. He nodded, and relief mixed with grief in his expression. I understand, he said. I need to carry my own mistakes before I ask to carry anything of yours. The kettle hissed, and I poured more water into our mugs. The silence between us felt honest for the first time in months. Barbara and Amanda avoided me at gatherings. Their faces burned when they met my eyes, and though they murmured greetings, the space between us remained. It did not matter. I no longer needed them to recognize my steadiness. I had it for myself. Eddie found work again. A small firm in Cambridge hired him after reading his complaint to the board. He called to tell me and sounded like a man standing straighter than before. I met him for coffee at a diner and handed him an envelope with a check for the first month's rent on a room above the bakery where Laura's office was. He tried to refuse. I told him Harold had always said to back the people who did the right thing, even when it cost them. Eddie finally accepted and smiled into his cup. Truth does not always pay well, he said. Sometimes it pays in peace, I said. Winter deepened. Snow lay in soft drifts against the porch rail, and the roads grew slick in the evenings. One night, I sat alone in the living room of the house Harold and I had bought in 1985, the copy of the will resting on my lap. The photograph of our wedding day in 1981 sat on the mantel. I traced the outline of my younger face in the picture, the veil and the nervous smile, Harold's broad grin, and the way his arm curled around me. I whispered his name into the quiet. I thought of all the storms we had weathered and how he had trusted me to carry this last piece. I had done it. Not with grace every moment, but with enough. The fire in the hearth cracked. Outside, the wind moved against the siding, steady and strong. I leaned back and let my shoulders touch the cushion eyes on the photo. My voice came out low and certain. At last, I kept what you left. Not just the house, not just the accounts, but the faith you placed in me. Not only the assets, but the love and the trust. I let the words stay in the air until they belonged to the room itself. Then I closed the folder, set it on the table, and breathed. Justice had not erased the wounds, but it had written a line under them, clear and firm. If you have ever been betrayed by someone inside your own family, if you have felt that cold grip of being told you cannot be trusted with your own life, let this remind you that the truth and the law can still stand on your side. Share this story so others who carry that weight can hear it and know they are not alone, and let it give them strength to hold their ground until justice speaks for them too.